Good evening, my name is Barra, Ruairi. I'm the Strategic Director of Place for Bristol City Council. I've been in post about 6 months, and so Bristol is relatively new to me. I've tried to use that time to get a hold of as much detail as possible, but I wouldn't say that I know every last bit of it. In the evenings that I have had since coming here, since about April, I've tried to travel across the city and see parts of it on my bike and in my car and every other way I could have to try and get it into me. But I think it takes a long time, so I profess not to be an expert. What I've tried to do tonight is just to give you a flavour of who I am. So I'll indulge you a little bit in that, but I think that's important. And then a response to what I've seen across the city in my 6 months and a few images that I've taken in my iPhone. So, fundamentally, who am I? I suppose, in many respects, if I get this right, I'm a maker. It's the first project I did in the UK when I left Ireland. That background was, the first thing I ever did as a job was that I was a welder, working in the family business. So the idea of making is really important to me. Now, I manage a council. I'm very interested in the reason why people interact in their place. Why, when somebody designed this bridge, or not bridge, this pier, I should say, looking out into the North Sea, why then people then decided to throw a few coins onto the pile, and was it the fact that the remembrance plaques were there? So now I would consider myself as an urbanist, having been an obsessive architect, previous to that a trainee accountant, then a city planner, now working for a council. But I'm very interested in how the economy and the place and planning and transport, how it all interacts and how culture works. So I draw. I did a little drawing. Towards, very early in, my wife said, "How's it all going?" I'll do a little drawing. And I think the biggest issue that I found was the need to balance in a very vocal city this idea of what's right and what's wrong. One man's green light is another man's red, and that is very difficult. And the role has to ask that scale of balance. There's been a lot talked about traffic engineers in this city. I'll say now, I'm very proud to work with those traffic engineers. The reason being, and the reason why I chose to work for Bristol, was I thought that I do not have to convince them to produce a livable city. They're on that direction of travel without a doubt. So, I like to observe the city. I thought this was quite interesting. Is this a marker of time? Is this an ownership? Is this kind of, I'm half tidy? But actually, I tell you, this was underneath my old council building in Bradford. And the staff used to sit down there in the car park and have a fag. And I went down and said, I can get what you're doing. It feels like that's time in, or is this time out? But it's quite an interesting role there, so that's quite an interesting observation. They stopped it. The next aspect is I'm quite worried about architecture. I'm quite worried about facadism. I'm quite worried about the idea that architecture is about an image rather than a soul. I'm quite worried about the fact that buildings don't give shade. I'm quite worried about the kind of lack of permeability of them generally. So there's a big issue there as an architect. It's quite easy to produce an image. It's quite difficult to produce a place. I'm very worried about the fact that, to swing a cat takes about 1.8 metres in terms of diameter, and that actually we're producing buildings and homes that are not big enough. The reason I'm worried about that in relation to the street is about the impact that has of micro units and smaller units in relation to how that street will be used and the services that that street actually requires. So it comes back to that base unit. It's really important. Small units do not necessarily create sustainability for our future. I have built quite a lot of what we might call places. My greatest desire in building places is actually to build free space, because I think free space is civic space. If you can build it without buying it, that's really important, okay? So much of our space we have to buy. You either buy it with a coffee, as Paul said, or you have to buy that space, you have to buy that time. The great aspect of civic is the fact that civic should be free. It's something we hold clear. When I grew up in Ireland, we had a thing called civic studies. It was 2 lessons a week. We had to do civic studies. It was phenomenal. So, when I was asked to say, well, what have you done in the past? So we put together a project in Bradford. The most important part of this was I wanted to develop a place which was in terms of creed, faith, race, population, neutral. That was a day out on a Sunday. It was a place to be a tourist in your own city. Not all cities have that this city has. And then it changed. It was able to assemble and change over time, starting with steam, ending with a full lake. With Sustrans, we needed to bridge across what was an awful guided busway. Imagine that. And the engineers came to me and said, well, we're going to replace the bridge, it's not DDA compliant and this is what you're going to have. And it was like another grey concrete building. So with Sustrans, we thought, well, let's just do something different. But the crucial aspect of this was that it was linking a school to a playground to the community that needed a school. It cost no more money, it just cost an awful lot more of effort. And it was about taking that on and trying to deliver it in a better way. I greatly believe in the idea of large-scale events, whether that's going to the footy or that's going to the kind of amphitheatre of the city. I think that's a huge part of civic life. The city space and the street that we've talked about, or the floating harbour, or any of those big spaces are big city amphitheatre type spaces, and it's important that you fill them with activity. Getting back to making, if I ever get some time off, I try and make. In terms of making, this is a study about time. One is a rolling stone that I dug out of a garden in Hebden Bridge that people used to roll on the way. The centre one is the rolling stone. People used to roll on the way to a mill. Pass time. How we pass time in the city is really important. The other is actually a pebble from a beach. The other one's water-worn. Live your life, love your home. Live your life, love your city. I'd rather that it was the latter rather than necessarily loving your home. Because if you love your city, then it's important how you're active in that. I'm very worried about the idea that there is a new place called travel. This is old. This is out of the Observer, Music Monthly, I think it is. And but this I think was an ad for Volvo. And when you think about it, lovely leather seats, they're heated. You get all sorts of kit in there. It's brilliant. It's like a mini living room. Oh, not a doubt about it. But this place called travel is difficult. So what I've said is my mission, and I've said to the whole team 6 months in here, what I'm trying to do is build better lives and better places all across the way. I change as I learn. What do you think? I'm going for a bit of audience interaction here. Okay. Good, bad? Good, yeah, good. Okay, well that's nearly a resounding yes. So, this morning at 6:30 in, I was going down Park Street, and I got overtaken by a Ford Focus, WDU 208. Okay, if anybody is there, see me after things. But it must have passed me at over 40 miles an hour, easy. And I knew it was trying to get past me. I could just feel it, because I could feel the engine. It was pouring behind me. And I was thinking, well, it's not going to take that long. But it passed me. And I'm very concerned about the battle for space in the city, genuinely the battle. Whether it's pedestrians, whether it's, the fact that, would I put my own children on the street with cyclists at rush hour? There's an issue here. So I said to the team, listen, I'm really worried about it, come up with something. And they came up with this, polite pace, shared space. So, Bristol a la carte, everybody wants life, activity. I photographed this, fat and oil. Not their problem, definitely mine. Definitely mine when it comes to flooding, definitely mine when it comes to the resilience of the city. So with that, when I've talked about what the city council should try and do, we should try and say yes. But then I've been told that in the city there's this phrase called yes but. And that is quite common parlance, yes but. But the but is in fact that actually we just have to protect the city. A lot of the city was made well before us. The bup stop, that wasn't us. Okay, that wasn't us, but it went global. It was in Russia, it was in Australia. It was quite funny, actually. I was interested in this idea of Bristol DIY. I photographed this early one morning. I thought, well, I wonder what the story is behind that chair. Who's actually left it there, and why is it being left there? And does that mean that we need to have more movable chairs in the city and people make their own space? Or is it the fact that actually if you want to paddle your feet, it's at the wrong height? I'm very interested in the choices the city has made in the past, well before me, because those choices of what now I've been given as my, my background to do my small part in the city. I'm very interested, we talked about Clarence Road. This is the effect of flooding. One wall that I believe built by French prisoners of war, pulling away at the cut. Really big issue there. We have repaired it, no doubt about it. I wish I hadn't need to do it because it's cost a tremendous amount of money. But actually the city is aging. A lot of the infrastructure is aging with it. The campaign to be a livable city, people talk about this, it's what I really believe in, a livable city. I've moved myself here, obviously, to do the job. We have a family here, we want to be here, want to have a great livable city. But I was always struck by this. I was coming up around the triangle there one night, and I said to these people crossing the street, because I have to know why you're crossing the street, and they said, we've got a campaign to claim the street. Fine, what are you doing that for? And I was struck by this, this sign, I can't believe I still have to protest this shit. And, feminism is about equality, about harassment in the street at night, about the freedom to walk the street, about the feeling of being free and safe in the street by both men and women, and this was the students, fundamental. So, granite's important, but so is care. We've had lots of controversy in relation to freeing up the streets. Some love it, some don't. I get both sides of the letters. Bristol's crazy streak, when I came in, about 3 weeks into the job, somebody told me that we were putting a slide down Park Street. I thought, oh God, this is a test. If I say no to this, I'm finished. So I thought, well, we have to make this work. And then I was told that there was crowdsourcing for it. And then I worked out crowdsourcing for what? Oh, crowdsourcing for the polythene and the hay bales and everything else. What about crowdsourcing to run the city? No, that's something you have to do. Okay, so you can't crowdsource. You cannot crowdsource the civic role. It's not a difference. So it's quite an interesting interaction. Make Sunday special. Again, pros and cons. Some love, some loathe. Alison talked about the view of the city from the air, and it is important that a lot of those postcards, we have the same kind of postcards of the city, but there's lots of different postcards. There's another image of the city from Dundee Hills. Reducing speed, I'm a very big fan of it. There's all my bosses and my mayor. So, 20 miles an hour. Great. I think it's a great achievement for the city. I tried to do it in Bradford. I got 1, 2, 3 streets done. And the reason I chose this city rather than any other city to come and work, and I'm humbled to have my position, is the fact that I think the city can really be a special city in the world because of its attitude it has to its own place. Clearly before me, tremendous work has gone on, and what I found myself needing to defend is this idea that the city doesn't build grand projects. Well, actually, I think the city itself is the project. And what it has done over time is make sure that project is the right one. 40 years of work has gone in. You can really move about this city. Tremendous work has gone on. Clearly there's more work to be done, without a doubt. Congestion, we know the problems, we're amongst them, but we have to tackle the city in a systematic way, as best we can, one after the other, get them done, some linear together. I've mentioned this idea of a polite pace, please. Without a doubt, that needs to be managed. It's interesting, the aggression. I cycled up, I tried to test myself on St. Michael's Hill, not professing to be like some sort of Superman. And I went up over this little hill, and I rang my bell. I was ages away from the person, and fine. They turned around, and they have a right good go at me. And I just let it go. I thought, well, somebody probably photographed me and it'll be a problem. But, the actual tension, I was really struck by that, by the ring of the bell, how difficult that was in the city. So we are planners, we plan, we try and build, we try and progress the city. But it actually doesn't all happen at one time. We've got a lot on, there's no doubt about it. We've got a huge amount on. We've got an enterprise zone to do alone. Into that connects a Metrobus system. Into that is an arena. Into that is economic growth. Into that is an extension in relation to Bristol Temple Meads, 2 high-speed trains by 2017. Into that is the refurbishment of Bristol Temple Meads. And that's just there. We're not taking on board our energy role or the need to protect the city in relation to flooding, or etc., etc. So there's a lot there. How we use that city, how we play with that city. So what I've said to the team is, what do? We build better lives and better places. This is what we're trying to do. We try to help others succeed. That's my ask. We will lead on the spatial, infrastructural, cultural and sustainable development of the city. Fundamentally, what do I come back to? I always try and think about it as scales. I am interested in why those fag butts are stuck into a conduit on the side of a building, but I'm very interested in where we'll get in relation to our devolution debate with government at the very extra large. And that's my role. I need to be interested in everything along that line. So that means I can't carry all the detail. So when it comes to questions, if there's detailed questions, I'll give you some names you can go to instead. So working at that every city scale is very important, and try and coordinate that in relation to direction of travel. But fundamentally, if there's anything I want to happen, is I want to have a happy human scale. I want to make sure people actually genuinely understand and enjoy this city. And I'm after, in terms of my role in this city, building a greater Bristol. Thanks very much.